We jump back into the game with Batra taking the corner kick. Hugo's continuing to yap. If you keep striving to be the world's best striker, Bluelock will be annihilated here. But as Batra takes the corner kick, Isagi just retorts, "Shut up." As we see movement in the box, Isagi says, "If you think you can outwit us, then go ahead and try," as Batra takes the corner. It's not a pass into the box though. And as Hugo and Charles see this, Hugo isn't really fazed. Charles says, "Huh? A side pass?" But the goalkeeper's locked in. He says, "That's not a simple cross. It's a short corner," as it's a pass to Hiori. God save us. But as Batra runs behind him, Hiori traps the ball and looks into the box. Run the signal play. We then see Isagi and Rin try to lose their marks, but Captain Obvious states, "They're up to something." But as soon as Hiori touched the ball, Loki dashed towards him. As Hiori winds up to make a pass, the goalkeeper shouts, "Cover your marks." But as Loki puts his foot out to block Hiori's pass, he feints and says, "Too late." He then passes the ball off to Batra. Batra traps the ball and says, "Totes." The goalkeeper's still locked in though. Batra again? He's right by the line. "But I won't let you make a close-up shot." But as Batra approaches the goal, he says, "This is when I do something cool," as we see that he passes the ball off. Pump faking Tame Impala. The goalkeeper's surprised, but he's still got his eyes on the prize. Pass away from the goal? As we see that it's actually a pass to Rayo. And as Rayo sprints towards the ball, he says, "Nice, Bachi. I'm wide open." But before Rayo can trap the ball, Hugo approaches him. "Are you? No shooting for you, copy machine." As he stares Rayo down. This surprises Rayo, but then he grins. "Shooting?" As he fakes a shot, he says, "That's not the plan." The goalkeeper's still locked in, by the way, and says, "He ignored it?" Hugo looks back as Isagi states, "Weren't you gonna crush me with logic, you second best bastard?" As we see the ball now flying towards Isagi Yoichi. And with Metavision active, he says, "This is mine." But before he can get a shot off, Charles bumps into him. "Not yet. The contrarian's here." This catches Isagi off guard. But Charles continues, "When Bluelock uses a pattern we don't know, we keep a close watch on the most annoying spot, aka where Isagi Yoichi is. That's my job." Isagi then tries to summon Kunagame. Gah. No way, they ruined our first signal play? But as the ball's approaching Isagi, Charles has a big ass grin on his face. But we see that Rin's able to make it over there. "Pass it, Isagi. Come on, over here." But Isagi's still thinking about Hugo's words. If you embrace your destiny as the second best, Bluelock can get even stronger. And unable to accept those words, Isagi says, "Shut up. I'm gonna live as the number one." He then makes a shot with his left foot. But as Rin sees this, he says, "You!" But Karasu and Batra are also looking on. Batra says, "Go." And as the ball's flying towards the goal, it's unfortunately caught by Renoir. And I just know Isagi's missing those Nigerian goalkeepers now. He likes his goalkeepers knowing they're cooked. But as Renoir catches the ball, he says, "This is the only place it could have gone." This shocks Isagi. "Huh?" The commentator then announces, He stopped it! As the Japanese fans look on in horror. But Hugo, seeing this as the perfect chance to talk more shit, walks over and says, "See, without your two-gun volley or your direct shot, you're a below-average striker. At this rate, Bluelock will lose because of you. It's time to wake up, Isagi Yoichi. You can change. Know your place. Obey your destiny." As we see his ego flare as he reaches out to Isagi. And we actually get an emphasis on Loki in the background too. Isagi's dumbfounded though. So's Batra. "For real?" Hiori then says, "Damn, what are we gonna do?" Rin just grits his teeth though. We even see Ego watching this. And they all start to think we can't use Yoichi Isagi. But with a keen eye watching on from the distance, suitability, destiny, Tabito Karasu in the flow state says, "The world's best, second best." After catching Isagi's pathetic attempt on goal, the goalkeeper starts a counter-attack. Aiku begins to panic. "He's making a long throw counter. Move back, Bluelock." Ryu then says, "This is bad," and Rayo screams out, "Watch out for Loki," as we see Loki sprinting up the field. And as he's sprinting into space, we see the goalkeeper throw the ball to him. Rin's trying to keep pace with him, and everybody else is just kind of watching on in horror. Anri's watching from the sideline saying, "Ego-san, they keep anticipating our tactics. Nothing's working. Do you have a plan? Should we swap out players?" But Ego just sits there and doesn't say a single thing. But jumping back into the game, as Loki traps the ball, he looks ahead and then warps past Hiori and I think that's Rin. But somebody's caught up to him. Wait up, speed freak. It's Chigiri. And as they run side by side, Chigiri says, I won't let you run free. But as Chigiri's holding on for dear life, he thinks, he's not just fast, he's pushing through me. He's gonna get past, but before he can finish that thought, Karasu slides in and steals the ball, surprising both Loki and Chigiri. Chigiri then screams out, nice Karasu! And as Karasu gains possession of the ball, he says, likewise, princess. Thanks to Chigiri racing him, I understood Loki's dribbling rhythm and managed to cut in just before him. But as he looks up the field, he thinks, but now, what do I do? I should assume we can't rely on Isagi anymore. As we see that both Charles and Hugo are waiting for that, Charles even says, yeah, come on. Karasu continues to rack his brain though. At this rate, they'll just keep reading and slowly crush us. I've got to do something, as his aura begins to flare up. Also thinking back to what Hugo was saying, know your place, obey your destiny. Isagi thinks, damn it, my abilities aren't effective. And as he starts to break himself down, he thinks, live as second best. Then watching Bats try and steal the ball from Karasu, if I stop worrying about scoring my own goals and focus on helping the team win, we could probably evolve. That might be the best way for us to defeat France, the king of the football world. But that wouldn't be Bluelock, as he then screams out to Karasu, over here! He thinks back on the quote, I'm going to be the world's best striker. That ego will never waver. As he then screams out, I'll make it happen! Karasu, being more unbiased though, thinks, dumbass, acting on a whim ain't gonna work against this team. As he then takes into account everybody's position, if we keep relying on you, Isagi, Bluelock is gonna die right here. Think of something, we gotta change. And as his aura begins to manifest on his body now, we see these crow-like wings grow from his back as he grows claws too. For Bluelock's sake, I'll change and become the second best, as we see him fully immersed in his ego. Then shifting gears, he decides to do a pump fake, getting past Bats with ease. This surprises everybody. Hugo, Charles, Isagi, who screams out, Karasu? He used me as bait to dribble past? Is he planning to score his own goal? We didn't practice a pattern like that. But as he looks over to Karasu, Karasu's completely immersed in metavision. What is he thinking? This surprises even Charles. Your vibe completely changed, Karasu-chan. And the goalkeeper thinks, they're back. Watch out for the shot. But as Karasu's making his way up the field, he thinks, ain't gonna shoot, moron. I gotta stop thinking of myself as a striker. Erase all needless info. Then scanning over the field to see the best positions, I'll use myself as the second best and devise a new plan. I'm gonna make us win. I'm in control. As we see that he's once again immersed in his ego. He looks over at Isagi. Not there. Looks over at Chigiri. There's not good either. Then even glances over at Rin. No, you dunce. Throw out all current plans. And as he reaches out to block a player from stealing the ball from him, right now, the most suitable for a goal is an extraordinary striker, as he then makes a pass. But it's not to Rin, it's not to Isagi, but Karasu watches on and says, I need ya. And it's a pass to Hiori. Oh god. But as Hiori traps the ball, Karasu's locked in and says, let's go, major sadist. And Hiori says, roger that, frenemy. You gotta stick with me on this. These are all segments in another video that's about the officials. But I'm also going to post each segment separately on here. And I'm not correcting this, by the way. I stand on what I said. But my first note with the officials is obviously us seeing Aryu at the start of the game in the box might be a hint or upscale to aerials. This one at first does kind of seem like bullshit and kind of insane. But even when you then consider like Hugo's yap and his philosophy and everything, this could be a weakness. Because the first and most obvious thing is that obviously who is challenging this nigga in the air? When it comes to aerials, Aryu has objectively been the best one when it comes to that. You know what? That was kind of a strong statement. Aiku's kind of good. Wait, is that what Aiku's the balance of? Like, smart defending, aerial defending? That's a yap for another time. But I know that this seems like some random fucking theory that I'm pulling out of thin air, but you've got to stick with me on this one. Because even when you go back onto the feats that have happened in this game, Rayo did this header when there was like 3 people around him. This shows kind of a clear weakness that France has when it comes to aerials. Because despite having every character specifically put there for a reason, not a single one of them was able to challenge Rayo here. And I know, again, this seems kind of insane, but then you also have to understand that Charles was wondering if Shido was going to play. Right here, he says, huh? Shido-chan isn't starting today either? And then as soon as Batra says, yeah, he's on the bench, Charles is like, really? We're gonna wipe the floor with you guys. Now, yes, this could seem like a one-off statement and it's just Shido upscale. I could just take it as Shido upscale. But when you start to think about it a little bit more, does this not start to kind of paint a weakness that France has? That weakness that France has is when it comes to like the irrationality of like doing stuff in the air. Because when you think about it, right, you can't have proper balance. You're not grounded. You're not stood on something. And by grounded, we could be talking about following your destiny. I know this is getting like really hypothetical, but bringing it back to aerials, Charles states here if Shido's not playing, they're going to wipe the floor with them. And Shido specializes in aerials. Bicycle kick, diving header, header in the box, dragon drive, all aerial type shots. But if you continue to look at France at this angle, the aerials are this unknown to them. It also helps you understand how Rayo got this header off when there was like 3 people around him. This is the state he jumped up for the header, mind you. 3 individual niggas around him. Somebody even goes to challenge him. Meaning that, like, in a hypothetical sense, they've thought about this, they just don't have good countermeasures. Because this one dude goes to challenge him, doesn't even matter. Doesn't even matter. He just heads the ball. He makes the pass. But we're still not done yet. There's one more thing that comes to this aerials being the weakness to France. But when Hugo's yapping about his philosophy when it comes to destiny, birds can fly. You gotta stay with me on this. Creatures just need to live in accordance with nature. Only humans are unnatural. If you saw a lion trying to fly, anyone would think it's foolish. And I think this is the weakness that Hugo has. It sounds insane, but for Hugo, the ground here is considered destiny. It's you following destiny. You're staying grounded. Your goals are set to your aptitude, your surroundings set to your aptitude, everything's focused and you're grounded, right? Then on the other side, birds can fly. This is kind of coming into the genius aspect, right? This is the person that he kind of envisions as Loki, right? These people leave this grounded ideology that Hugo has and they fly, they go up. And they can do that because, in a funny way, it follows Hugo's philosophy. Because a character like Loki is born a bird, they're born to fly. That's why he's talking about Loki being a natural born number 1. He's supposed to do that thing. So then, this is when the weakness comes in. When something then chooses to leave that grounded ideology and do something they're not destined to do, in this example, a lion trying to fly, that is the aspect that ultimately I think is going to be Hugo's downfall. While France's weakness is going to be aerials and people that shoot aerial goals, Hugo's weakness is going to be people leaving that grounded understanding of football and still choosing to do something they don't have the aptitude to do. Thus, the lion tries to fly. Something grounded tries to reach a higher height that it's not born for. Loki's a natural born number 1. He's born to fly. He's a bird. Isagi's a natural born second place or a grounded animal. In this situation, a lion. He then goes against his aptitude to try and be the world's best striker, a lion trying to fly. Hugo's philosophy doesn't necessarily account for evolution over time. By one lion trying to fly, yes, it fails, but by trying again and again, eventually over time, it's going to evolve to do something it wasn't supposed to do. So how is that then projected in football? Funny enough, this could actually be Isagi using his left foot as well. Because in this showing, it just takes attempts in a game and then eventually figuring out how to do it. Just for an easy point of reference, take flying as Isagi's left-footed shot here. This is the lion jumping for the first time. It's not going to work, it's going to be the worst run. If he has 2 or 3 more shots, the third one could go in, even though they've made a counter for this, because he's learned over time. The lion continued to jump. It eventually figured out how to do it. But taking this all the way back to our original point, I think France's actual weakness is going to be aerials. Because out of all the environments that can happen in football, aerials are the most unpredictable. Even if you get the same pass to the same spot, your jumping height might be different, slightly different. Your speed might be different. Your angle might be different. And while these sound like really simple things, because it can happen when you're just taking a kick too, it's a lot more unpredictable because you don't have anything to adjust yourself with. So in France's eyes, aerials are unpredictable. but philosophy-wise, but in philosophical terms, it's going to be something that's not meant to fly, trying to fly. Like, it's just a big metaphor, basically. One of my other notes is that Hiori wasn't able to link up with Isagi, which kind of shows a continuity. Because after the NEL, when it was the start of the World Cup and they were all meeting up and doing training, Isagi says to Hiori, "You're too slow, you can't keep up with me." And I just want to say, I like how that was shown throughout these two matches so far. Because in the Nigeria game, Hiori quite literally doesn't link up with Isagi at any point. He links up with Rin, Rin has an attempt, Rin doesn't score. And then Hiori himself has an attempt. But in this new chapter as well, Karasu and Hiori are the people that are first breaking free from Isagi's influence. And it's funny to me because these were the two people that originally disagreed with him. Or was involved in that argument, because Hiori didn't disagree, he was just like, yeah, you guys fight over me. And I also kind of want to say the reason why Karasu thinks about using Hiori is because Hiori didn't have a good performance last game, so France is more than likely going to overlook what he does. Because he didn't have any big showings, because he didn't have any important roles in that game, France could overlook him a lot easier compared to like Isagi or Rin. Any character that scored in the Nigeria game, I want to say France has more than likely thought about that person a lot more. So Bachara, Rayo, Rin, Isagi, all of those players, they scored in that game. France watched them score in that game. So France is going to be more prepared for those people to do something. But characters like Hiori, Chigiri, Karasu, although they did play well in that game, well, apart from Hiori, because they didn't have any big showings, France isn't going to be as on guard for them. Because think about it from France's perspective, right? If you see a character like Hiori get the ball compared to a character like Rayo get the ball, you're going to be more on guard for Rayo to shoot because you saw him do that in the match before. You're not going to be as on guard for Hiori because he shot and the goalkeeper saved it, so it's like, it's not that dangerous. And I think that's ultimately where we get this little point where Rayo's about to receive the ball, but Hugo comes in to stop him. Because Hugo knows he's got the possibility to actually score. That's why Hugo's here at this moment in time. Because I'm pretty sure the people that Hugo has blocked so far has been the people that have scored outside of Bachara. He's got this moment with Rayo, he's got a similar moment with Isagi, and he obviously blocks Rin's shot the same way that Kaiser did. I kind of want to say he wasn't as on guard for Bachara because he knows that Bachara is kind of the playmaker. Not the ideas guy, but he's the one that works the ball up the field. I'm not saying that Rayo, Rin, or even Isagi couldn't do that, but obviously they relied more on Bachara to do that than anybody else. Characters like Rin, Isagi, Rayo, while they do make plays and work the ball up, it's not as much as Bachara. So then, applying all of this to this part of the story, it makes a lot of sense that Hiori gets the ball here, because Karasu and Hiori were the first two people that Isagi kind of had an argument with when he got this number one position. Karasu's now essentially challenging that mentality because he says, I'm going to make us win. And he's using Hiori because Hiori's been overlooked by quite a few people at this point in time. France is probably overlooking him. Isagi was overlooking him. Which is funny because in the grand scheme of things, his expectations have kind of flipped. In his backstory, the expectation was that he's always going to be the best player, or they need him to be the best player. And he's raised by silver medalists. That's another tangent though. But what I mean with this tangent is that obviously everybody put really high expectations on Hiori, and Hiori didn't like that. Now it's the inverse. Now nobody has expectations of Hiori, and Hiori wants to do something. Because as soon as he gets the ball, he's fired up. So while I will sit here and laugh and say that it's plot and blah blah blah, I can understand that it's not actually plot. This isn't like a random arse pull. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. France would overlook him because he didn't have any notable feats in the Nigeria game. Isagi was overlooking him, and Isagi's in this fucking Summit Fever mentality right now. We're talking about live as second best, and now Hiori's got the ball. You know, this guy raised by 2 silver medalists, you know, the 2 second places, who was raised by number 2s. Now he's got the ball. I don't think that's a fucking coincidence. So with that thought in mind, there is like a 25, maybe even like 33% chance Hiori scores here. Because he's being overlooked, because it's not expected. Because Hiori's background is kind of important to what's happening right now. Like the whole silver medalist raising him, living as the number 2. So it makes a lot of sense. It genuinely makes a lot of sense. The only one thing that kind of goes against Hiori scoring at this point in time is that this is technically a restricted environment. Although, I guess you could make the argument that since Isagi's the leader of this team, and since this team's down now, Isagi's in restriction, and Bluelock's choosing the freedom of a new option. Does that make sense? Basically, think about it like this, right? You know, like the whole theory is if one team scores, the other team's in restriction. In this point in time, that only applies to the striker. So the team being centered around Isagi and this team now going down 1-0 puts Isagi in restriction. Or you could argue that it puts the whole team in restriction, and that's why Karasu's awakening, because Karasu's a restricted ego type, I guess. Also, there's a possibility that this guy gets Predator Eye. But then, because Karasu's a restricted ego type and he's trying to find a new formula, he burdens the restriction, and then Hiori burdens the freedom of choosing something new. I feel like it does make sense, but I'm just being a fucking idiot trying to explain it. TLDR, Hiori getting the ball, not plot, because it knocks Isagi out of his summit fever. France isn't going to expect him to do anything because he didn't have any big showings. He was raised by number 2s, and we're talking about living as the second best. Karasu's technically carrying the restriction, so Hiori might be able to score, but I doubt it. I think if anything, Hiori might link up with Rin. Kind of just because of this panel right here. And here as well, to be fair. Hiori could be sadistic to Rin in the sense that he knows that obviously the team's centered around Isagi, so nobody technically uses Rin. So then he makes it look like he's going to set Isagi up again and then uses Rin to bait him. Or to piss him off. Ultimately playing into Hiori being a sadist and Hiori's stated ego that he wants to make that pass that leads to a goal. I can't say death on this app, but we can have a bunch of fucking rich, powerful people do unspeakable things to children. Sure, man. And since the world as we know it has been exposed to be a fucking lie, I'm just gonna send it and say whatever the fuck I want on this app now. So Rayo faces death. But the reason why I'm calling Hugo death is that Hugo's more of a philosophical death. He's the death of your dream. He's the death of the thing that you've been trying to achieve. We kind of get the best example of Hugo being this philosophical death in how he talks to Isagi. He tells him to know his place, he tells him to obey his destiny, and tells him that he needs to play or should play as a number 2. That's the only way Bluelock can get stronger. But at the exact same time, is that not the death of Isagi's philosophy? Is that not the death of Isagi's goals, of his ambitions? It is, and I think that's what Hugo represents. While Nagi kind of represents the physical death of a person, whether it be goal formulas in the sense of Yukimiya's gyro shot that he stops in the 3rd selection. I know they're on the same team, but I kind of want to say that's more of a metaphor for that being the death of that goal formula. The reason why Nagi traps it, the reason why Aryu's there, is to show us that that goal formula won't work on this level or any of the levels continuing on. Because I'm pretty sure that's the first time that we saw the gyro shot. It was then interrupted by Aryu, trapped by Nagi, Nagi scores, and then it gets archived by Rayo. So I want to say that this is a physical signal that the gyro shot can't work, because it's been killed and it's been archived. Rayo's kind of an archive of weapons that can only work in very specific environments, but in the grand scheme of things, if you try to rely on that consistently, it doesn't work. Like the gyro shot, for example. Yukimiya shooting the gyro shot all the time doesn't fucking work. Rayo archives it, though, because it can work in very specific conditions. But I do want to say that Nagi's kind of the more physical side of what death is, because he's got the touch of death. That's what his weapon is. That's his trapping. It's the touch of death. His aura is a giant fucking skull. Not only that, but the tarot card that he gets given in the 2nd selection of Hiragi is death. But for all those reasons, it makes a lot of sense why he would be the physical embodiment. Because actually adding one more point onto this, Nagi being the physical embodiment of that makes a lot of sense because he's a genius, right? And geniuses usually take the physicals over talented learners. They're stronger, they're faster, they can jump higher, they can do stuff that talented learners can't do, and they're physically better. So then in Hugo's case, Hugo is a talented learner, I want to say, right? Quite obviously a talented learner. So then for Hugo's sake, Hugo represents kind of the mentality or the philosophical side of dying. You're trying to do something you're not meant to do. Your aptitude's out of place. You're supposed to be a number 2. You can't be a number 1. You should obey your destiny. These are all more so the philosophical or mental sides of death. Instead of it being more so of a physical thing, it's more of a mental thing. But Hugo still represents death because look how fucking blank his eyes are. Almost the exact same eyes that Nagi has in the 1st selection, mind you. So all of this is important for Rayo because Rayo had a close connection to Nagi when Nagi was here, right? So Reo had a close connection to death. And I feel like you see that in the different arcs, because in the first selection, for example, Reo faces death in the sense of Zantetsu kicks a ball, it bounces off a wall, it's going to hit him. That's until Nagi obviously interrupts it and then shoots it away. Reo had to face death, or at least had his life flash before his eyes in that moment. That's not crazy to say. You've then got the second half of the first selection when Raichi's rage baiting the fuck out of him. That is the death of Reo's usual mentality of just passing the ball to Nagi and Nagi scoring. That's where you see that panel of Reo starting to panic, and then funny enough, the embodiment of death, i.e. Nagi, awakens. Because that's what Reo is facing. That's why he's starting to panic. It's not that Raichi represents it, it's just that Raichi's pushing him into that environment. So then Nagi awakens, because what the fuck are we talking about? You then have the second selection where he faces it in the sense that Nagi just straight up fucking leaves his bitch ass. And then the team that he decides to join as a counter goes 0-2, by the way. Doesn't win a single fucking game. So he kind of has to face death in a physical sense because he's literally playing against Nagi. And then he has to face death in a metaphorical sense because now it's like, what do I do? What color am I? What am I supposed to do without Nagi? In the third selection, he doesn't face it. He kind of puts it onto Yukimiya because obviously he archives the gyro shot. I don't know if I spoke about this in this video because I've recorded this like 3 times. But basically, between Nagi and Reo, they both essentially show Yukimiya that the gyro shot's not going to work anymore. Nagi shows him in the sense of it physically not working, and Reo showed him in the sense that it's now archived so it can work in very, very specific environments, but not consistently enough to do it all the fucking time. U20 game, he faces it more in the sense of if Bluelock loses, then Bluelock's done. And then in the NEL, he kind of tries to develop his own mentality of playing like Sai and Rin mashed together. It doesn't work, so he's got to face that mentality not working out in their first game, by the way. And then by the end of the NEL, he's facing it because Nagi's been fucking eliminated now. So the Reo that we're seeing now is kind of more of a trauma response Reo. Imagine going through or facing death so many times. After a while, it's going to take its mental toll on you, and that's what I think's happening to Reo now. He's very calm, he's very collected, because like, bigger picture-wise, this is kind of a trauma response, right? He saw what happened to Nagi at the end of the NEL. He had a very emotional reaction to that. It didn't get him anywhere, so now he's just got this trauma response of just like instantly shutting down. No emotion, no stressing, just staying focused on the objective. Even to the point of where he's telling other people, all right, guys, focus up. It's only 1 point. I don't want to say that this is a fully bad mentality for Reo to have, but it's obviously not a good one as well. This version of Reo is essentially wearing a mask. And that's where I think this interaction comes from. Hugo stares at Reo being the philosophical metaphor for death. Reo looks back, and although he's surprised at first, kind of showing us that the old Reo's still there, he starts to grin because for one, he's baited death this time. Instead of death finding him, he essentially brought it to him. Because in this moment, he's not planning to shoot. This was always going to be a feint, I think. So comparing this environment to the other environments, Reo expected this to happen. Reo expected death to approach him as he's trying to shoot. But unlike the other times, Reo planned for this. It wasn't like Raichi in the first selection. It wasn't like Nagi dumping him in the second selection. It wasn't like Nagi not even having a fucking choice and just getting eliminated. Now Reo is the one that's baiting it to him. I think he's more so surprised that it kind of actually worked. But I kind of want to say that this one panel is a mixture of surprise and nostalgia. Nostalgic in the sense that Hugo and Nagi are representing the same thing. Surprised because his plan actually worked. But this version of Reo that can keep it together when faced against death is a Reo that's more experienced than the other Reos that we've seen. Whether it be a trauma response or a genuine evolution, this Reo is more mentally prepared for facing death. He doesn't hesitate, he doesn't panic, he doesn't sulk about it. He grits his teeth and smiles in the face of it. I'm only going to put like 4 notes in this video because I don't want to dump all of them in because it might be way too fucking long. But the last note is obviously Isagi's ego kind of reverting to what it was like before the NEL. What I mean about that is that obviously in the NEL, Isagi and Yukimiya have this conversation after Yukimiya goes in that 1v5 rampage. And Yukimiya basically declares that his ego's unwavering and that he sees himself as the hero of this match and that he's going to overcome this challenge by himself. which in turn is now the exact same environment Isagi finds himself in. He's got an unwavering ego and he's still trying to score with a formula that doesn't work. I know a lot of people are upset and annoyed at Isagi about this, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be, right? You should be shit-talking Isagi for this mentality. But just to kind of give an explanation as to why we're at this point, Isagi's got summit fever. Summit fever is a phenomenon that somebody experiences when they're either close to achieving their goal or just achieved their goal. It's used in mountain climbing more than anything else. When a person wants to climb up like Mount Everest or K2, for example, they'll do perfectly fine up until that like last mile, or when they've reached it and now they're on their way down. That's the most dangerous part of any climb, because now that you've achieved or just about to achieve your goal, all caution, all safety precautions, all experiences from previous things fly out the fucking window because you've achieved your goal or you're just about to achieve your goal. So you feel invincible. And that's essentially what Isagi's going through right now, because his ego has kind of reverted. But the only way for that to make sense is that he's reached a peak. And he has. Isagi's goal up until this point in the story has been being the #1 striker. In the world, yes, but I kind of want to say his focus was more so on Bluelock. Because obviously he was 299th and then he worked all the way up to first place and then he started to like fucking celebrate. I want to say that Isagi kind of had this sub-objective of becoming the best striker in Bluelock first, because obviously it's necessary to become the best striker in the world. And that's the place that he's currently in. That's his current environment. Because that's his current environment, and because he's now achieved that goal, all safety precautions, all experiences, all evolutions he's acquired up until this point are starting to fly out the window. Because again, it's summit fever. He's achieved the thing that he set out to do, or he's about to achieve the thing he set out to do. That's where we get this reversion of his ego where he's now in the exact same environment that Yukimiya was in. Because in this environment, mind you, Yukimiya kept the ball, dribbled up the field, and took a shot which he realistically shouldn't have took. Isagi then walks over to Yukimiya and says, instead of you trying to shoot and score with the gyro shot, why don't we work together and you can assist me? That way we both mutually benefit from what happens, right? Yukimiya then turns it down and Isagi gets pissed about it. And then he says this, just watch, soon you and your precious fantasies will sink straight to hell. His ego's not wavering. He's not passing to people who are in better positions that he's in, ultimately kind of annihilating any progress he made in the Manshine game, in the PXG game. Hell, even the fucking Ubers game, because in the Ubers game, Hiori's talking about strikers having egos that draw people to them. You think Isagi's got that sort of ego right now? He literally doesn't. That's why Karasu's branching off. But to once again back up that Isagi's not being this logical demon that he said himself that he was going to be, think here. The ball's coming to him. He knows Charles is there. Charles has already bumped into him now. He's stressed as the ball's coming to him. Rin's in space, NPC on his back, shouting, pass it, Isagi. Come on, over here. But what does Isagi do? Think to what Hugo was yapping about. Then get pissed off about it. Then try to force a shot when he knows, realistically, he's not going to make that. Ultimately doing the exact same thing that he was pissed at Yukimiya about in the Manshine game. Same guy that threw all his emotion away to score the final goal in the PXG game, and team up with Kaiser as well, has now turned into this illogical, emotional striker that shoots in environments that they shouldn't. The only way that this can make sense is that Isagi's experiencing a euphoria from getting that #1 spot. Because you can even look at what happens in the Nigeria game. He's egging Nigeria on, even though Ego said to the team, don't do that. Aiku has to remind him. Isagi stays emotional. Isagi doesn't care. He's still riding that euphoria. But then even if we try and take a look at the environment that's surrounding Isagi at this moment in time, him and Ons essentially swap places. Because if you think about the Nigerian team, they all relied on Ons. They all only saw Ons as the only goal-scoring option. That's basically what's happened to Bluelock right now. We've had character? We've had the character of characters, like Chigiri, for example, just be completely annihilated. You're telling me Chigiri sat there being like, it's okay, we've got Isagi. Bro, weren't you the same guy that didn't care that your husband got eliminated and was like, yeah, we just need to be egotistical and focus on our own goals? Now you're like, yeah, we've got Isagi. Who the fuck are you? Or the very fact that, like, most of Bluelock's goal formulas finish with Isagi. This signal play that Hiori's talking about, why does it have to end with Isagi? Why can't it end with Rin? Is Rin not better at shooting than Isagi is? Because, like, the ball's essentially just gliding across the top of the grass. It is bouncing, it is in the air, but it's not to the point of where the direct shot is the only way that somebody could receive that. You're telling me that Rin couldn't volley the ball like he did with his crash shot. It just has to end with Isagi, right? But basically, my point with this little tangent of bringing this screenshot up is that when I was saying that Isagi's passed the torch on to Ons for Bluelock and the ego and everything like that, I think we're seeing, unironically, the environment that was surrounding Ons be swapped to Isagi. Now Isagi's surrounded by people that only fucking glaze him, that see him as the only goal-scoring option. The exact thing that was happening to Ons. But now Ons is an environment where everybody's trying to score their own goal, everybody's being egotistical. They quite literally swapped environments with this fist bump. Because, in another sense, Isagi's unwavering ego, is that not the exact same thing as On saying, yeah, we don't need to run trials or get new people because we're gonna be fine, right? You've got me, I'm here. Is this not the exact same shit that's happening to Isagi? It's just that in Isagi's case, it looks a lot worse and we're seeing it play out worse because we've seen that he's experienced this from other people. We've seen him shit talk people that are illogical and emotional. Whether it be Yukimiya, whether it be Kaiser, whether it be him rage baiting Nigeria. For that person who values logic, not being emotional, making the best play that logic can provide, for that person to then be the person that's getting emotional seems a lot worse than us seeing like Ons be emotional, Kaiser be emotional, Yukimiya be emotional. Because for those characters, it's understandable, right? Like, you're just a person. But for Isagi's entire story so far has been him learning to take emotions out of the game. That was the point of the PXG game. But now his character has started to revert, and that's simply because of Summit Fever. So if it is Summit Fever, it's not bad writing that Isagi's selling the fucking bag here. It makes a lot of sense from, like, a psychological standpoint. If Isagi was to just randomly whip a goal out for his ego being unwavering and God being like, yeah, I'll give you something for that, then that would be bullshit plot bad writing. I'm only saying this because I think people should be shit-talking Isagi at this moment in time. Like, it makes sense, right? He's playing bad, he should be shit-talked. But my only thing is, I don't think you should call it bad writing just yet, because there is a possibility for a completely logical explanation for why he's doing this. If we got to the end of this game, Isagi still had this exact same ego, and he still scored the final goal like the final goal merchant he is, then I would hands down be like, yeah, that's bad writing. You can be really upset about that. But as it stands right now, it is kind of obliterating Isagi's character, but it's still in a way that still makes a lot of sense. And if you don't believe me, you can go and do your own research on Summit Fever, because it is a real thing. I'm not just making shit up. So this reversion is bad for Isagi's character, but it's not bad writing. It's not bad writing yet. If he doesn't change and scores, then it is bad writing. If he continues to go down this mentality and continues to just play worse and worse, it's logical. But I'm pretty sure that's everything I wanted to say with all of these notes. I was going to put more notes in and yap about other things like Charles and fucking Isagi having a rematch, but it's not a big, important yap. And while I would give Karasu his own yap session for Awakening in this game, I don't think it actually needs it. Because for the most part, I can explain it with him and Hiori together. Because like, they both argued with Isagi, or Isagi had a problem with both of them, and now they're the two people that are breaking free from him first. So it makes a lot of sense. But I'm pretty sure that's everything, so thanks for indulging my bullshit as always. I appreciate it if you've made it this far. Never stop updating your world's perspective. Drink water, look after yourself.